Hi, the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, July 17th. Well, periodically here at the SIweather.com, we like to focus in on the solar cycle, specifically current solar cycle number 24. Occasionally we update what's going on around the world in terms of oceanic cycles, specifically the sea surface temperatures. And today we'll focus in on global sea ice. Right now the global sea ice is relatively close to normal, with below normal readings in the northern hemisphere and above normal readings in the southern hemisphere. The sea surface temperature anomaly chart is crucial to what's going on around the world with respect to sea ice. Let's start off with that sea surface temperature anomaly chart. First of all, here's the equator right here. This particular line right here is the equator. You can see the western coast of South America right here is generally cooler than normal conditions. In the tropical Pacific, we still have a weak La Nina going on right now. That could have an important impact on the upcoming winter 6 months from now in the northern hemisphere. Throughout the northern half of the Atlantic Ocean, it's generally above normal. We track the northern Atlantic sea surface temperature anomaly with an index called the AMO, the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation. We'll show a plot of that in a couple of minutes, but a couple things I want to point out with respect to sea ice. The white areas on this particular map indicate where regions of sea ice, such as right here. Now notice in the northern hemisphere, right next to the sea ice, we have well above normal sea surface temperatures. Here in the North Atlantic, that certainly is having an influence. The AMO, or Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation, is in a positive phase. It kind of moved into a positive phase or a warm phase back in the middle part of the 90s. I believe that's having a direct impact on the below normal sea ice conditions in the northern hemisphere. Meanwhile, way down in the southern part of the world here, in the near the Antarctic, all this is sea ice here, the white region here. Now notice here the sea surface temperature anomalies indicated here with the blues and purples are below normal temperatures here. So in the southern hemisphere you have a lot of below normal sea surface temperatures with above normal sea ice conditions, and meanwhile way up north where the sea surface temperatures are warmer than normal, indicated by the reds and oranges and yellows, we have warmer than normal temperatures next to the below normal sea ice conditions way up in the North Atlantic. Well, here's the northern hemisphere sea ice anomaly at the current time from the University of Illinois Cryosphere website, and it's an excellent website. Just Google University of Illinois Cryosphere and you'll find all this data. The trend has certainly been down with respect to northern hemisphere sea ice conditions here. Now notice it really began that downward trend right about in the mid-90s in this time frame, and that's important as we'll take a look at the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation Index in a moment. But the downtrend really began before that time frame. It was generally above normal, but right around the middle 90s there was something that changed in terms of the sea surface temperatures in the North Atlantic. Namely, they became warmer than normal, or a positive AMO, and we've been kind of in a downward trend since then. Right now, currently below normal in terms of northern hemisphere sea ice at negative 1.1. Now let's focus in on the AMO that I just spoke of. And here's a plot of the AMO, the annual AMO, going way back into the middle part of the 1800s. But this is the time frame we really want to focus in on. Notice right around the middle 1990s here is when the AMO slipped into that positive phase or warmer than normal phase. Again, this is an index that we meteorologists track to take a look at the northern Atlantic sea surface temperature anomalies. We slipped into this warm or positive phase in the middle part of the 1990s, and indeed that's when the northern hemisphere sea ice began to go below normal. This type of oceanic cycle typically lasts a couple of decades. It's very likely that 5-10 years from now the AMO will reverse itself and go back to normal or even below normal, a colder phase, and I believe at that time the sea ice in the northern hemisphere will indeed get back to normal or even above normal as it was when the AMO was negative back a couple of decades ago. Well, before we get to the southern hemisphere, one more map I'd like to show here comes from the Danish Meteorological Institute, and it's kind of an interesting plot here of the basically the North Pole temperature pattern, and this green line here represents the basically the climatological mean going back a couple of decades. And notice here that the daily mean temperatures in the last couple of months are running below normal here. So it'll be interesting to follow this here. Down here we have the number of days into 2013. So basically for the last 60 days or so, the daily mean temperatures in the Arctic region, the North Polar region, 80 degrees north and above, temperatures have been slightly below normal. So we'll continue to monitor this to see if it in fact has any kind of an impact on the sea ice conditions up there, but it's just something interesting to follow. Now let's take a look at what's going on in the southern hemisphere. And here's the Southern Hemisphere sea ice anomaly from the University of Illinois Cryosphere website. Way above normal, 1.314 above normal here. The trend has been really up in terms of sea ice content over the last couple of years down here in the Southern Hemisphere. Again, at the beginning of this video, we looked at the sea surface temperature anomalies, basically colder than normal temperatures in the sea in terms of sea surface temperatures. Right surrounding the sea ice here in the Southern Hemisphere. I believe there's no doubt the oceanic cycles are playing a role in what's going on both in the Northern Hemisphere and down in the Southern Hemisphere. Well, how impressive is that sea ice content right now in the Southern Hemisphere? This is another plot available at the University of Illinois Cryosphere website. And indeed, it's almost at a record high for the date here. This is a whole bunch of lines you see here in terms of Southern Hemisphere sea ice going all the way back to 1979. The current 2013 position is right here at the end of this yellow line here. And notice it's above almost every year going back to 1979. There's 1 year where there was more ice in the Southern Hemisphere than is currently existing. The way it's going, we very well could have a record for this particular date any day now in terms of Southern Hemisphere sea ice. So it's quite impressive indeed. Well, the final plot I'd like to show, again from the University of Illinois Cryosphere website, is the global sea ice condition. This is combining what's going on in the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. Here is the normal line right here going in this direction right here, and here's where we stand right now, very close to normal in terms of global sea ice. Over the last few months we've been right near normal, with the below normal up north, the compensated by the above normal down in the Southern Hemisphere. So again, at the current time, the global sea ice is relatively close to normal, and we'll continue to follow this over the weeks and months to come here at the SIweather.com. That's it for now. I'm the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian.